Discussions between President Obama and his Chinese counterpart are due to resume this evening in California. Joining me live from Washington, D.C. is policy expert and author Donald Gross. He wrote the book, The China Fallacy, How the U.S. Can Benefit from China's Rise and Avoid Another Cold War. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Donald Gross. I suppose you see this meeting in California then not as a confrontation between two world leaders, but as an opportunity.
That's exactly right. But more important, in fact, is that both President of China Xi Jinping and President Obama also see it as a potentially important historical opportunity to reset their relationship.
I mean, you've spoken before about the two fallacies, that China and the U.S. are on a collision course and that China's economic rise will be at the U.S. expense. And that may well be true. But nevertheless, if one country grows to have influence around the world, it's by definition, it's going to start rubbing up against its powerful neighbor.
Of course, and you're right, and that's happened already, and that's one of the reasons that the U.S. initiated in the fall of 2011 what was called the rebalancing policy of making more engagement, moving political, economic, and most importantly, military resources to Asia in what many saw as an effort to counter the rise of China. That has created friction over the last 2 years, and so now, as President Xi Jinping said last night, the Chinese are seeking a quote-unquote new historical starting point, and for his part, President Obama has emphasized the importance that the United States attaches to a peaceful, stable rise of China. So the noises and the public statements are very positive at this point.
But how do we explain the West's view of China? Because clearly there's not much that China wants to do that necessarily treads on our toes. It's not like the Cold War with two competing doctrines, one must give way to the other. And yet people do regard China with a mixture of fear and suspicion. They do think that, by and large, their motivations aren't necessarily in our interests. How do we explain that? Is it just a cultural divide?
It's more than a cultural divide, and there's also a difference in perspective, I think, in Europe and Britain and in the United States on the security side of the equation, because you remember that the United States and the United States Navy in particular have dominated the Asia-Pacific region since the end of World War II. So what we're seeing now in China on the military and security side is an effort to modernize its military forces and prevent the United States from exercising, you could call it, hegemony in that region. That's offensive to at least neoconservatives in the United States and to others who worry that China could try to, quote-unquote, displace the United States in the Asia-Pacific region. So on the security side, that's the concern that many people here have.
What about these issues, then, of cyberspace? So topical at the moment because the two leaders are meeting in California. Topical because in the U.S. press there are alarm calls about President Obama's motivation for authorizing this kind of activity, and also alarm calls here in the UK now. There's a scare that our very own GCHQ might be benefiting from spying practices from the US. All this plays into competitions of industrial and military power around the world, doesn't it?
Yes, that's a very important point. Here in the U.S., in terms of public opinion and statements by the U.S. administration, the cyber espionage issue in the last 6 months, and certainly before that as well, has heightened the concern about Chinese security aggressiveness toward the United States on both aspects, as you mentioned. On the commercial side, hacking by individuals and Chinese companies of U.S. secrets, U.S. commercial secrets and innovative technologies, efforts to steal that technology. And then on the military side, cyber espionage, finding out about American weapon systems, and some people believe efforts to compromise those weapons. Now, you also mentioned the recent revelations that the U.S. has had a classified and secret program of monitoring communications by Americans and in an effort to deal with the war on terrorism. So that's playing into this as well. There is a lot of concern in the U.S. about that, and it just goes to show that when it comes to cyber espionage and monitoring of internet communications, we don't know a great deal. It's secret, it's classified, and in that classified world, many things are happening that the British public, the American public are just not aware of. So it's very helpful, I think, that now that there has been a recognition that that's taking place, that that's also going to be subject to significant public debate.
Indeed. Donald Gross, thanks very much indeed for joining us tonight from Washington.